Hey, Aldo's mom, come and record the Drift ad.
Today's episode is brought to you in part by Drift Outfitters in downtown Toronto, Ontario. Drift Outfitters is your source for all things fly fishing. From waders and boots to thread and feathers, Drift has it all. Check in on their website for their latest updates and policies regarding shopping during the pandemic. Curbside pickup for your online and phone orders is a great way to get the gear you need. And they're shipping for free across Canada on orders over $100. Visit driftoutfitters.com to learn more. driftoutfitters.com.
I remember the first time I went to the Credit River to fish. I went with my Uncle Joe. I'd moved to Toronto from Ottawa to work in advertising, and as excited as I was to be in the city, starting off a career in an industry I found interesting, I was equally excited to be finally fishing trout consistently. See, where I lived in Ottawa, I didn't have the trout resources Southern Ontario does. Sure, there were spots to go fishing for trout, but not like down here. Down here in Toronto or the GTA, you can drive 30, 40 minutes and be into pristine trout fishing waters. Like really beautiful, lush, wild places. And that close to a major city, it's pretty unreal. We talk about it often on the show, how lucky we are to be able to drive a stone's throw away and not only catch a variety of species, but be in really beautiful places. The first trip to the Upper Credit for me was eye-opening. I just was shocked, really, that a river like this existed here. Even the drive up, as I got closer, the landscape quickly changed. The terrain got rockier, hillier, the foliage got thicker. It was like going through some portal, like Narnia, like a fishing Narnia. I parked my car, the air was so fresh, it was early in the season. We met up on the banks of the river and Joe started showing me the ropes. He took me to his favorite spots, showed me what to look for when chasing trout, and even told me about some of the history of the river. To be honest, most of my first time fishing the Credit is a blur. It was a bit of an overload. It was like this is a short drive from my tiny apartment in the center of Toronto. Okay. That afternoon, watching Joe fish one of his favorite pools as the sun began to fall, I understood what we had. This place is extremely special.
Hey, this is Josh DeAngelo, longtime angler of the Upper Credit.
Hey everybody, it's Jeff Parks with Calm Waters Fly Fishing.
Hey, this is Demisha from Brown Girl Outdoor World.
I'm Alex Parks. I'm a guide with Calm Waters Fly Fishing. I'm a host of the television show The New Fly Fisher.
So I first learned to fly fish, stumbling around chasing brook trout.
The Credit means so much to me because I have been fishing it for probably about 45 years now.
Over 15 years and 3 kids later, I still make time during the week to walk its banks.
Started fishing the Credit maybe 4 years ago. Was the first time I actually fished on the Credit River.
This river housed the very first brookies that I've ever caught.
The Credit River and its wild trout is an absolute blessing, considering how close it is to a major city.
You know, these beautiful fire red gems just leaping out of the water.
When people are coming in from Toronto or coming in from Europe, let's say, when I get some clients and I tell them we were heading up into the Credit River, a lot of them Google it. And when they Google it, they send me notes back saying, wow, this is pretty unique. Whew.
For me, it's unique because it's a place that you know, when you look at the Credit, you're not thinking Toronto, you're not thinking Ontario, you're not thinking close to the city, but you can get on the Credit and feel like you've been transported to a whole different place, a whole different time.
My kids love tagging along when I go to the West Branch to play along the banks and help me catch some brook trout.
We are visitors to them, you know? That is not our own world. It is theirs. And the Credit is magical specifically in that way. It really tells that story.
How can you have such a fantastic wild river fishery, wild trout fishery, 35 minutes from Toronto, a 5 million plus people urban area, and you've got this wild trout? This is unheard of. The wild trout need to be protected. Anything wild needs to be protected. And as humans, that's what we need to do. We are supposed to be the smarter ones.
It's the canary in the coal mine. It's the If you don't look after the water, you're not looking after the environment.
It's a space that needs, right now, a big space that needs protection.
And I think it has to start with the brook trout. I love brown trout, I love steelhead, I love Atlantic salmon, but I am most afraid of losing the brook trout because it is an indicator species. You know what they say, if brook trout can live in it, you can drink it. So with that gone, what's left? What's left?
Although getting to the upper credit can feel like you're heading into a portal to fishing Narnia, the credit is part of our world. I know it's hard to believe. And being so close to a big city means it's also close to serious development in the GTA. As the city expands and the towns around it grow, the credit becomes encroached upon. Year after year, it becomes a little less remote. And with that comes problems, big problems, that could affect the river in big ways, like killing off entire fish species, native fish that have existed in the river since forever. One of the biggest problems facing the credit right now is taking place near the town of Erin on the West Credit River. In this episode, we're going to talk about the problem facing the West Credit. Why is a sewage treatment plant being built now? Why is the effluence being dumped into a small, cold river like the West Credit? Doesn't the town care about this resource? Who's downriver, and what do they have to say about it? Who is standing up for the fish? We first heard about this problem when we were contacted by two guys, John and Dean. John and Dean are avid fly anglers right here in Southern Ontario. They belong to the Isaac Walton Fishing Club, enjoy spending time on the Credit River, and of course live busy, full lives outside of fly fishing. But when they caught wind of the treatment plant, they knew they had to get to work. Along with many other people fighting to stop this plant from being built, John and Dean have spent months raising awareness around the issue and taking action to stop it. Myself, Aldo, and Yilma had the chance to sit down with John and Dean and ask them questions in regards to this project. Throughout this episode, you're going to hear that interview, as well as some other interviews with other people involved. We hope you enjoy this special episode of SoFly, the fight to save the West Credit. Hey Aldo, hey Yilma.
Hey guys.
Hey, how's it going, Mitchie?
Good, how you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Why don't we just start with Aldo, you talking about your first trip to the credit?
Okay, so I moved to Toronto in 2009. I didn't have a car. Grew up in Ottawa, much like you, Mitch, and but I remember I got a Zipcar membership when that came out. And the first thing I did was research places to go, and I drove up to the credit. And growing up in Ottawa, you don't have trout streams. You go to upstate New York because it's close and it's beautiful, but it's all stocked. And you read magazines and you see these places of like gin clear streams and wild fish. And the first place I went to on the credit was the Grange, and I remember parking at that little bridge. It's a much nicer bridge these days, but I remember parking at that little bridge, looking at the water and being like, what?
Stoked.
Being a bit intimidated, but mainly being like so pleasantly surprised that this extraordinarily clear stream existed here. And then as I kept exploring that day on the Grange and up in Bellefontaine, I think the first time I fished the West Credit was when I fished the Bellefontaine conservation area, and I was just astounded that these little wild brookies were there. And I remember I didn't know as much about fly fishing as I do now, and I think I was just using like a Royal Coachman or something funny, But brookies love Royal Coachman. I don't know what it is. They love it. And this little trout came up. I didn't catch anything all day, and then this little trout came up like a little secret out of nowhere. Grabbed the fly, and I looked at it, and it was like a little 8-inch brookie, and it was so beautiful. And at that moment, I was just like, I can't believe this is 40 minutes from my house in downtown Toronto. I can bartend on weekends and have the river to myself on Monday and Tuesday. Sign me up.
Yeah. Yilma, what's like one of your favorite memories from fishing the credit over the years?
Well, I learned to fish on the credit.
Yeah.
Because remember, I was born in Trinidad, and when I came to Canada, we moved to Mississauga, and a little diaspora action. And I learned to fish. That's where I learned to fish. That's where I fell in love with the water, and that's where I fell in love with that beautiful river. And it just curbed my love for fishing. And then when I started fly fishing, which was about 6 years ago with you, Mitch, if it wasn't for those beautiful little brookies that we were catching on those dry flies, single barbless hook, by the way, I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have been as excited on my first day on the river fly fishing as I would have been, as I was that day catching those little brookies. Yeah.
Yeah, you started fishing on the credit like for bass and stuff when you were a kid, when you came from Tobago?
Yeah, not even bad, like rainbows.
Right.
We'd catch rainbows. We would, well, I thought there were rainbows, but I guess there might have been steelhead. Who knows? You never know, like some of them that we caught. I mean, we weren't fly fishing, but, like I would frequent that river almost every day because that's how close I was to it. I was like basically on the river. And as a kid,
like ride your bike down.
Exactly. I ride my bike down with my friends, catch, sorry to say this, poor froggies, but catch little froggies, tadpoles, do the thing the kids would do and, fish. Yeah. Always have my rod with me in my backpack and we'd catch anywhere from suckers to smallmouth to pike to rainbows on the credit. Yeah.
Was it when you started fly fishing that you fished the upper credit for the first time?
Fished the upper credit for the first time with you, Mitch.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Is that the question? Basically, I repeated the same question you said. Yeah.
No,
yeah,
I was fished the upper credit before that. Yeah. But yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that.
I remember the first thing you said when we got there, like, "Whoa, this is like upstate New York." It's just so beautiful.
It really is.
Right.
Yeah.
It's it's as beautiful, if not more beautiful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It is a really unique system because you do have the West Credit with the little brookies and then the main stem with the still brookies, browns and now rainbows and I don't know, just the whole thing cascades. Starts in the Halton Highlands there and Bell Fountain and tumbles down the escarpment and.
Well, yeah, this might be a perfect time to like pass it to the interview that we did because Dean explains this like really perfectly, like what the West Credit is. Dean, why don't you just kind of explain what the West Credit is? What is the West Credit River?
So the West Credit is, I guess you'd say the Credit River is one of the major tributaries in the Greater Toronto Area. So it's on the west side of Toronto in Mississauga. And I guess as you go further up the West Credit River, generally the water gets cleaner and the fishing conditions get better. And so the West Credit River is a branch of the Credit that's sort of, I guess you should say known or not known, in the sense that it's known by anybody who's sort of a geologist and a biologist. And if you look at some good brook trout papers in Toronto, they'll say, we studied this population in the West Credit River of brook trout. So when I say it's known and not known, I guess I would say it's known to geologists and biologists, but not that well known as a really good fishing spot by fly fishermen. And this particular section of river has incredibly high good water quality, and it supports a really good population of brook trout. And I'm not sure, John, if you want to add to that, but that is my summary of the West Credit.
No, you did it justice, Dean. What I would add is it is a native self-reproducing population of brook trout, and in the upper, they're kind of segregated from the lower credit by some drop-offs in the river at the Cataract Falls on the main stem, as well as just a little downstream on the West Credit, you've got a dam at the Bell Fountain Conservation Area. So it keeps the native brook trout upstream, and browns and rainbows would be down below in the lower watershed.
One of the neat features of the Credit River is there's a large waterfall called the Cataract. So the fish come out of Lake Ontario, and it's kind of like the fish that come out of Lake Ontario. It's kind of a soup, right? There's Pacific, there's salmon, there's browns, there's rainbow. They sort of come out of Lake Ontario, and they head up the Credit. And there's a place called the Cataract where you have this big waterfall, and none of the migratory fish get above the Cataract. And generally, if you fish above the Cataract, which is called the Upper Credit, you'd be into really clean water and brook trout. And sort of below the Cataract, you would be into a mixture of migratory fish, good brown trout population. And this particular section is below the cataract, but it's sort of off on the west side of the credit and is protected by this dam at the Bellefountain Conservation Area. And it has really high water quality, so it allows the brook trout, even though there are some migratories in there, they generally get held out by this low dam, and then the water quality and the coldness of the water allows the brook trout to outcompete the other fish.
John, do you have anything, like, in your words, that makes it, like, what makes this part of the river so special to you?
To me, I do consider it my home waters. I only introduced to it a few years ago. And I guess what makes it so special, I live in Toronto, in the GTA, including Hamilton. You're looking at probably close to 6 million people. And within an hour's drive of my home in the big city, I can be sitting in the river in my waders, no sounds other than the rushing water, and able to catch native brook trout. What I consider the most beautiful trout there is. So for me, that's I really love the area, and I think there's lots of other anglers. You don't have to be an angler to love that area. It's clean, cool, nature the way it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of like, I mean, like, Dean, is this kind of thing rare in Southern Ontario? I mean, yeah, we don't have a ton of these sort of spots to go to. Like, why is this spot so unique?
I guess, like, I think I would say, if you're a brook trout fisherman, it's a readily accessible area to fish for native fish. And it's like, I guess I would say in Southern Ontario, it's probably one of the best remaining self-sustaining brook trout populations. So you got to be careful when you say about brook trout, because they kind of show up in a lot of places. If the water is cold and they've been undisturbed, they can be there. So finding them is kind of like it's almost like an art, or it's like a challenge to go out and find brook trout in wherever you live. But this West Credit River is a really strong self-sustaining population that's been there for a long time and is doing well currently.
Right. I mean, I think you guys hit it on the head. Like, we all live in downtown Toronto, and within 45 minutes, depending on traffic, of course, but within 45 minutes, I can be fishing for wild brook trout in like an extraordinarily clean stream. And I know everybody that I take out there that might be new to the area. I mean, I'll even say myself included, when I first moved to Toronto from Ottawa, the first time I went to the Credit River, I was like, this is this close to downtown Toronto? Like, it's pretty remarkable. I mean, we could talk about the whole river if we really wanted to, and how amazing it is to catch steelhead in the middle of Mississauga. But sticking to the upper credit, 45 minutes away, you're catching wild brook trout and naturalized browns. It's pretty incredible, I think, and with such a high population density.
You meet people from like Huntsville, and they're like, "You guys have brook trout down there?" There are brook trout in Southern Ontario, and they're like, "Yeah, like just outside Toronto, there are brook trout." You know what I mean? Like, that's like, they thought they only had them in Northern Ontario, but they're there, right? It's unique.
So what is the problem facing the West Credit River?
How long is this podcast? How long is this podcast, Mitch?
Usually we have an hour. Usually we have an hour.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Okay. Dean, jump in anymore. The town of Erin, it's a municipality that includes most of a good portion of the West Credit River. Mm-hmm. Like any municipality in Ontario, it's growing. It actually has pretty big plans to grow its population. Being so close to the city, you have developers with interest in constructing residential, commercial developments, easily commutable. You get a bit of that country lifestyle. So for the municipality, you've got a population of approximately 4,500 people, and everybody in that municipality is on a septic system. And in their wisdom, the town of Erin figures, well, to promote growth and to attract growth, particularly with a big subdivision that might have upwards of 1,500 units, residential units, the only way that developer's really going to take that on is if there's a sewage treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant operational, so they can get rid of what. It's got to go somewhere, and they don't want it sticking around the property. They want it to discharge somewhere else. So to go through approvals for a project like that is a fairly long, intensive study Usually takes a couple of years. There's a government process. It's called the class environmental assessment, and the proponent, in this case the town, hires a high-priced consultant to go through a variety of studies. They look at options, and it's basically to ensure that the stakeholders, people that are interested in it, whether it be the citizens or government agencies or conservation groups like ourselves, should have an opportunity to comment during that study period on what exactly is happening with respect to the design and what kind of a plant they're going to want to build. The problem was a lot of organizations were not in the loop at that time, and the project was in theory approved back in 2019 by our provincial Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Minister, I think it's Environment, Conservation, and Parks. MECP,
Parks,
right. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Right.
So that has been approved by the Minister of Environment, Conservation, and Park back in August 2019, and in the last 6 or so months, we've taken exception to that. We have a coalition of citizens groups and conservation groups that have looked very closely at the study report that was compiled for that project, and we found a lot of gaps, a lot of inconsistencies, a lot of lack of stakeholder consultation, to the degree where we firmly believe that this project should have a closer scrutiny, which we hope will happen via our taking this project and a request to the federal government for them to institute what's called a federal impact assessment.
Right. So basically, like, this whole wastewater plant thing was kind of just getting pushed forward without people being consulted.
There was consulting. A lot of people did chime in, but there were a lot of groups that weren't included, and some of the groups at the table right now were not included at the time, which we feel is a fault in the consultation process that went on, and we're doing our best. We're doing our best right now to again point out those problems and take it to the federal government, and they do have the power to institute a federal environmental impact assessment.
So yeah, quickly to summarize, the sewage plant going in, obviously we don't want effluents in the river. Given that, let's say it's perfectly clean, even though obviously, we can talk about the, shortcomings of that system, but let's just say, for argument's sake, it's perfectly clean. It's getting dumped into the river at a higher temperature. The treated water is getting dumped at a higher temperature, which would drastically change the temperature of the West Credit River, which is a cold water stream, thus impacting the brook trout population. Maybe Dean, what's the problem with increasing water temperature?
So it's like, you got to be careful because you got two technical people on your podcast here, so we'll try not to go overboard. But
Yeah.
but to try to I guess to sort of summarize is what there are is Ontario. There's provincial water quality objectives, which says you can only degrade water quality to this level of pollutants. Okay?
Right. Okay.
And the Credit River is much cleaner. The West Credit River is much cleaner than this. Okay, it's much cleaner than this provincial water quality objectives. So the plant, as it's currently designed, is going to use a new technology called a membrane technology, which will meet those provincial water quality objectives. The problem is the provincial water quality objectives are more they are I guess I would say not survivable for the fish. So some of the when the effluent comes into the river, you're dealing with oxygen levels, you're dealing with ammonia levels, you're dealing with the phosphorus levels, which meet the provincial water quality objectives, but which are still going to be toxic to fish at the effluent location and for some distance downstream. And then in addition to that, the membrane technology has actually gotten so good that they can meet these. They can put so much effluent in that they are adding enough effluent to change the thermal characteristics of the river. And so part of the environmental assessment was, so it's kind of a unique case, because if you typically you're sending this effluent into somewhere like Lake Ontario or the St. Lawrence River or Owen Sound Bay or a large body of water where it doesn't really matter. Right, a little bit of effluent's not going to change the temperature of the water, but in this particular case, they do have relatively clean effluent. It's not good enough for fish to live in, but it is clean, and it goes into the river, and it's such a small receiving body, and they're able to clean it up that they are adding so much effluent that they're going to change the thermal characteristics of the river. And there was a thermal assessment done. This was realized. So this was raised as a point of contention in the environmental assessment process. There was a thermal assessment done, and the thermal assessment was very weak and very, very narrow. It used 1 year of sewage plant data from a similar sewage plant. That was 2017. That was the coldest year in the last 11 years. So they said, oh, look, the effluence only reaches 20 degrees, but they sort of picked this year that is the coldest year in the last decade, right? And then so you produce this thermal assessment, and then the minister reads it, and really you're dealing with a government that is really pro-development. So the minister reads it and goes, oh yeah, okay, this is good enough. I can rubber stamp this, and then there's their approval, and then once they get the approval, everybody hides behind the ministerial approval. But we have several issues with the plant as it is currently designed. One is that, the effluent, the composition of the effluent, yes, it will meet provincial water quality objectives, but it does not meet the guidelines for, aquatic environments. And the second is that it's going to be too warm. It's going to change the ecosystem of the West Credit River.
Yeah, the temperature. I mean, we've said how many times now, native brook trout, cold water stream, and cold water trout. That's synonymous. 19 degrees centigrade, brook trout. It's been proven they start to stress out. You get upwards of 23, 24, and you're dealing a death blow, pretty close to it. Just add in the fact that responsible fishermen, and I know that you guys work alongside drift outfitters and ourselves, you have a stream thermometer that you take along. If you're brook trout fishing, if that stream is much more than 19, you really shouldn't be fishing, even if it's catch and release. And again, it's been proven that even with catch and release, you're going to have problems with those fish down the road. They might look fine, but they are really stressed out. So that temperature is critical. And as Dean has described, during the study, they have not adequately addressed what that temperature impact would be. They haven't used sufficient amount of data. They haven't accommodated for climate change in terms of temperature increases. You're going to have climate change increasing groundwater temperature, air temperature, natural stream temperature, storm runoff. All that is increasing. They have to build some sort of a buffer in to manage that temperature increase over time. And this plant is, we're looking at an operating period up to 50 years. They have to do something proactive to ensure that those temperatures are kept down for the survival of native brook trout.
So can we stop this? Where are we at in the process of that? What can we do?
So, at this point, the best thing that could happen would be for the federal Minister of the Environment, Jonathan Wilkinson, to designate the project. And that's not often done for wastewater treatment plants because they're typically handled at the municipal or the provincial level. But he could designate this because it impacts fish species which are under federal jurisdiction, brook trout, and there's a endangered red-side dace in the area as well. He could designate this project and require parts or all of it to go through a federal impact assessment, which really is a redo of the environmental assessment, where they could put on the table all kinds of options like, subsurface discharge, redesign of the plant to cool the effluent, effluent criteria, temperature criteria for the effluent going into the river, and adding those things, and that another assessment that allows those things to be added could save the brook trout in this river, for sure.
Save the brook trout in the river, the ultimate goal. But between seeing that go through and where we are now, it feels like there's a forest of red tape. I mean, having this case designated by the federal minister, Jonathan Wilkinson, would be a huge step towards saving this river and saving these fish. But how the hell would that get done? I mean, to have this case be brought into the federal spotlight, well, it's going to take a lot of people, a lot of passionate people.
Hello, Ken speaking.
Hey, Ken, how's it going? It's Mitch calling from SoFly. I know I sent you an email there.
Oh, you did, Mitch. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm fine. I'm fine for that interview. I got a bunch of contractors in the house here because, and I'm just going to get out of the way. I just got to speak.
Is this a good time to chat, or do you want me to call back later?
Yeah, no, it's a perfect time.
Okay. That's Ken Cowling. Ken is a longtime resident of the town of Erin. He's retired in his 70s, spends his days hiking down and around the Credit River. And Ken, he's fired up. Like, sit on a toilet next to a river in minus 30 weather for the month of February fired up.
Yeah, she's quite the interesting scenario we're up against here, isn't it, Mitch?
Yeah, it really, really is.
It's absolute. And, you know, I'm involved with a group here, Mitch, and you know, the more I've read into it, I'm more of a hands-on grunt kind of a guy. I was the guy who's going around knocking on doors, distributing signs. We got about, I might be out, it's about 700 signs out there so far.
Yeah.
Stop the sewage plant, save the trout. And then we did brochures, and I put brochures underneath it. You know the area, I'm sure, being a trout fisherman, right?
Yep, totally.
Yeah, so anyway, we've got brochures underneath every windshield wiper, right awesome. From cataract down to terracotta. Oh, I was out on opening day. It was beautiful, and what a good reception we had there. So
yeah,
just to give you a heads up, our site, our little group now is getting a website together to try and wake up the lemmings here in Erin, because our town is so pro-development, and the wool got pulled over our eyes, and I'm having a major problem, and that there's a number out there that I'm still looking for. Now, I don't want to be quoted on it, a cumulative capacity of the river. Way back in 2013, and I got a copy of this from a guy by the name of John Kincaid. He was the hydrologist with Credit Valley Conservation. And when it was initially proposed 1,500 homes, he didn't think the capacity of the river was good enough for that many. And so he said maybe Erin should consider just 500 homes, you know. And all of a sudden, that number is 5,000.
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, did the river grow 10 times? Not to my knowledge. And I'm going to tell you something. I have never experienced the rivers and ponds and streams as low as they are this year.
I know. That's what I've been hearing.
We're in a drought.
Yeah, it's like August lows, right?
Yeah, and I'm out my back property now to get away from the noise of these generators and stuff. And my goodness, there's some numbers out there, and it's just so pro-development. And when we're wanting to put these homes, it's the first batch is 1,500 a strip mall in the McDonald's, and it's the first of 9 or 10 I'm hearing.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, the proposals. So anyway, I'm doing my due diligence trying to fight it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Sometimes it's like farting against thunder, though, Mitch. I just sometimes there's frustrating days with it, but I'm giving it our best shot anyway. And we got a terrific group. Do you know Steve Noakes and the like? Awesome guy. He's the guy who does all the drone footage for Trout Unlimited.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Have you seen some of the videos?
I have, yeah.
Oh,
beautiful.
I was just out there. What's today, Wednesday? Yeah, Monday I was out there and I bumped into Steve.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you where we were. At the 6-line culvert, that beautiful culvert there.
Yeah.
Right at Winston Churchill. And you know, Mitch, isn't that astounding how on one side of that culvert is Wellington County, that's my side, and the other side is Peel, and the politicians allowed that in Peel?
Yeah, it's true.
Like there's more to this than meets the eye. I'll tell you, if I was a resident of Peel, I would be camped out in front of the municipal office until I had answers.
100%. Yeah, it seems fishy, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, that word has come up so many times in the past 2 months, that word fishy.
Yeah.
You're damn right it is.
I heard about the protest you were doing back in February, was it?
Yeah, I've been marching for about 5 months. Yeah, I'm a hiker and I love the outdoors, and I'm retired. And it truly is a mission. Like, I've got 2 boys and 4 grandkids, and I'm an avid hiker. When I go to the 10th Line Bridge, which is one of my, that bridge, the Bowstring Bridge, right?
Yep.
And I can sit there. I'm not ashamed to say that I've damn near cried next year. It's just pathetic. I just can't believe it's such an archaic way of getting rid of waste. You know what I mean? It's not waste. It's treated effluent.
Yeah.
But the reality is, once you do any research on these plants, there's stuff that doesn't get removed, i.e. micro, in the filtration process of any sewage plant that I've read. It doesn't get rid of microplastics, endotoxins, and medicinal ingredients that are in your body. And I just got a report last week, and I hope you got it. If not, I'd have to find it for you. And it was about where they caged some trout south of the discharge pipe in Orangeville and some north of the discharge pipe. And all the ones south died, and when they were dissected, we found them with liver damage and something in their gills. With the cause that I've taken up here, so many people have jumped on the bandwagon, and now I get fed a bunch of technical data, and I'm not a technical guy. I'm not computer savvy. I can email, look up websites, but to do certain tasks for me where it would take you 2 hours, it takes me 5 because I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Can you just kind of set up a little bit about who you are and what your relationship is to the Credit River?
Oh, sure. I'm proud to say this. I'm 71 years of age, and my dad brought me up to this area when I was at 5 years old. We used to terracotta forks of the Credit. Hey, Mitch, I'm just going to say one thing.
Yeah.
I'm back at one of the tributaries to the Credit right now.
Yeah.
It's never been this low. You'd have to see it.
Oh my gosh.
It's and so if it's this low, it's a very simple question. How do you get the assimilative capacity then?
Yeah, exactly.
Like they're trying to put 7.2 million liters of effluent in. I don't know what the number is of. Obviously, you got to have freshwater ratio to that.
Yeah.
Whatever 2-3 times. There's different numbers for low water, different numbers for high water.
Yeah.
And so, my point is this, and I know eventually a beaver dam. If you and I dropped a tree across the river, we've changed the flow of that river until it.
Yeah.
And look what Mother Nature's doing right now. And this is what I wrote in a letter to the editor.
Mm-hmm.
I said that Mother Nature is the valve to a river.
Yes. Yeah.
Not an engineer's report.
Yeah.
But anyway, I got sidetracked on
yeah.
this. Just I took my breath away when I was looking at the river here, and I'm blessed with having it behind me. And anyway, I've been up here since I was a boy. I'm an avid hiker, and I walk lots from the forks of the Credit up to the Cataract. And I live in Erin. I've been living in Erin 42 years at the same place, and I fish, not as much as I used to.
Yep.
And matter of fact, hardly at all around here. I ended up on Georgian Bay on a boat. But anyway, I've got a love affair with this river because I go back with it 7 decades, obviously, you know.
Yeah, it's a long time.
And the legacy I want to leave for my kids and grandkids is exactly what I'm looking at: a nice trout stream, not something that's got the potential. I stress the potential to mutate wildlife downstream. And here's the part that really blows me away.
Mm-hmm.
That I understand that there's people, I stress, might be using this river as a water source. In other words, there's a lot of people who live right on the river down in Bell Fountain.
Right.
And let's face it, their aquifer and their wells are right there at the river. Has it got the chance to? I would think it has the potential to ingest some of those pollutants that we just talked about that weren't taken away by the filter process at the sewage plant. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so anyway, that's why I'm quite passionate about it. It's just, plus, I realize this is selfish. I love this little town, and I've been in construction 50 years, which gives me. I'm gifted with being able to see what things look like down the road. I can look at blueprints, and I can tell you what the finished product looks like almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm going to tell you what we've got here. If I blindfolded you and took you to Milton and said, "Welcome to Erie and experience the charm." That's what we're going to get here.
Yeah.
We're just getting paved. It's going to be paved right over.
Just paved. So I take it you don't necessarily want Erin to grow in the quite that same way.
Exactly. Absolutely. Because the proposals, we don't have the infrastructure, the roads to get people out of this town. It's not like over in Nobleton, which is a very similar population to this town. They were quoted same numbers where it's going to cost this much to hook up, and right now they're up to $55,000 per home, and our mayor is telling us it's about $8,000 for hookups. Like we're not getting no true numbers. And I was in construction. Do you know what it's going to cost me to hook up to this system? Between $80,000 and $90,000.
Jeez.
And as we speak, I'm getting away from all the noise out there, generators and trucks going. I'm just installing a $10,000 generator system.
Yeah. Because
when the power goes out, I'm going to be on a sewage pump here. Well,
right.
if you got a sewage pump, you need a generator.
Yeah.
So anyway, they're costing me
Jeez.
Well, if I have to hook up, we'll see where it all goes. I hope the whole thing. I hope we have a new environmental assessment, and people get their head a shake. And I'm going to tell you something, Mitch. I contacted the CAO and all board of directors of the Credit Valley Conservation Authority, and I said, how can you have the name conservation in your title, Credit Valley Conservation, and allow this atrocity to happen into this river? And then they come back with all these rebuttals at me saying, oh, it's all being tested here, and it's good. This is going to be state of the art that's going in and all this. And I'm going to tell you, I was an electrician by trade for over 40 years. Majority of my career was fixing and reinventing state of the art equipment, and that's true. What looks good on paper doesn't necessarily come out when it starts to get applied. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and so anyway, I'm against this proposed growth. That the proposed growth, I realize we've got to have some growth, but what they're doing here is ludicrous. And when I said about comparing it with Nobleton, there's a good example of how high their costs have gone, and ours are going to go the same way. I mean, they're saying $126 million for this plant. I'm saying it's going to have cost overruns of 130%, and I save these emails for my grandkids. And I told the mayor council, I'm saying it's $290 million, and it's going to be $500 to $600 sewer charge every year. And meanwhile, you just pump your tank out for $500 every 6 years now. And so look at the cost up there.
Yeah.
They're ruining the ruination of the town. And you'll see me quoting that word in those articles, and I'm going to make sure you get.
Yeah, for sure.
If you Google, I know how you do it.
Yep.
If you Google Wellington Advertiser letters to the editor,
I found it.
Just look for my name at the bottom of letters to the editor.
Yeah.
Or I think somebody told me you can punch up Ken Cowling, Erie, Ontario protester, and I might get it. But you've already got it anyway.
Yeah.
Are you computer literate, Rich?
I am. I'd like to think I am.
I'm from Jurassic Park.
Well, this is a turning point, like you say, like how can we risk, that? I'm looking at a picture of you wearing a sign that says "Say no to this shit show."
That would be me.
I love that picture, and I love that line. I think that's amazing.
And if you notice, I put the I sideways, so yes, I didn't say shit show.
Totally. That was. I love it. It's amazing.
And matter of fact, I've got 2 of those signs made, and they're out in my shop right now. And when I protest at the site, I carry them, and another buddy carries one, and then we just carry some signs too, But because of this damn plandemic, I couldn't call it now.
Yeah.
I tell you, I've done too much reading on it.
Yeah.
I got a real redneck buddy, and he says, "Here's what's causing it all." And I says, "Oh, you're nuts!" And I start reading about it. Now I'm starting to go crazy. But I got sidetracked there.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I love the sign. I think it's amazing. Like,
yeah. Sorry, I haven't been marching because of the COVID. That's what I was going to say.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
I haven't been marching because of the COVID because I didn't want, and trust me, they're doing everything in our power, our council, to shut us guys down. So anyway, it's been an interesting time, and I'm not a fly fisherman. I'm just a dedicated lover.
Yeah.
And I don't fish the credit. Yeah, well, I might get back to it.
Yeah.
But I'm in love with the river just for its beauty and the wildlife that's in it. Like, I was over at that culvert. I'm going to give you an example.
Yeah.
The proposed affluent dump site, which is on the Wellington County side, on the west side of that beautiful culvert.
Yep.
Well, my goodness, I was just sitting there. I actually spent the day there, Mitch.
Oh, yeah?
I went over at 11:30 and I stayed till 5:30. I couldn't leave the place. It was so beautiful.
Oh, man. I know.
And I stayed there, and was I rewarded?
Yeah.
Ducks, osprey, a beaver swam by,
Oh, wow.
and you got, wait till, and here's the part that you're going to like.
Mhm.
I couldn't believe that the trout were jumping behind that dam. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And I thought, Jesus. But then I started looking out,
Yeah.
and when the sun hit it right, there's a hatch of some bug out there right now. And I guess that's brought some of these brook trout to the surface, you know.
Yep.
Looking for bugs. That's, you know, I was at that river, Mitch, at the 10th line bowstring bridge, and a young guy came in there with a fly fishing thing there. And I says, well, and I says, how do you doing? You'd be a guy about your age, I'd say. And I says, let me get nosy. I want to watch this. He says, go ahead. And it was a still day. So in other words, he wasn't duking it out with wind or anything.
Yeah.
Well, I was kind of shocked at how far he got it out. And as soon as he did it, he had a hit. I says, my God. And it was a fly that had on there.
Yeah.
And then he says, I missed him. So anyway, he says, oh, I'll head back there.
Yep.
And he threw it back out. And Mitch, it was like he put it right in the same bloody spot again. and this time he got it. And it was a little 5-inch brook trout, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. It's so beautiful.
Oh,
man.
God. And so anyway, and so he kept at it, and we ended up with a nice chat, and a real avid outdoorsman, you know, and everybody I've been speaking to, Mitch, and I hope you say this in this podcast, man. I because of this COVID, when I went around on opening day, April 24th, I went right up to the fishermen that were in the river, and I says who I was. I says, with your permission, can I put this brochure under your windshield wipers? He said, yes, absolutely. And some of the people were in shock.
Yeah.
Because a lot of you fly fishermen, and this is why you should be commended. Yeah. Because for having this podcast to wake people up to something. Like, you won't believe the amount of people right in my little town that are oblivious, because we have been deemed by Ryerson University and somebody else, we've got the most secretive town council in Canada. That's right from the media.
No way.
The most secretive in Canada.
Jeez.
And so when you say something fishy, yeah, something fishy.
Ken's not joking, by the way. A quick Google search pulled up a bunch of articles about the secrecy of the Erin Town Council. Yes, the town of Erin was officially named the most secretive municipal government in Canada in 2020. The most secretive municipal government in the country. One article on Toronto.com wrote, "It has become commonplace for the town of Erin to refuse to be transparent with the media and therefore local residents on even basic matters of public interest. Local officials regularly avoid interviews with the media, insist all communications from media must go through a recently hired communications officer, and are only done via email. The town has even failed to inform the media on meetings where major decisions have been made. Something fishy? Seems like it." Ken's passionate drive to fight for the Credit River is incredible and inspiring, but he isn't alone. Along with the work being done by John and Dean, there are a number of organizations rallying to protect the credit.
John, what is the Coalition of the West Credit? Who are the members of that?
Okay, we've got a couple of community organizations. The Bell Fountain Community Organization. Interesting that we talked about stakeholder consultation. Bell Fountain and the town of Caledon is just downstream of the village of Erin, which sits in the upper tier municipality of Wellington. So actually, Winston Churchill Boulevard is the dividing line. And Winston Churchill Boulevard at the credit is actually where the effluent pipe is scheduled to be installed, right on the municipal border. And as they say, you know what flows downstream. So the citizens of Bell Fountain are extremely concerned about that. So you've got that citizens organization, community organized BCO, have been in existence for 20 plus years. They've taken a real interest in it. Then you've got another group that formed during the process called the West Credit River Watch. Again, mainly folks in the town of Calton, other side of Winston Churchill, who would be receiving this stuff, this sewage downstream. In addition to that group, you've got ourselves, Trout Unlimited Canada, our chapter. You've got Dean's organization, Isaac Walton Fly Fishing Club. You've got the Ontario Rivers Alliance, which is an advocate for rivers across the province. And you've got a group called Ontario Streams, who have the same sort of a mandate. And everybody's in it for protecting the river. So we've come together. At times it's been a bit like herding cats, but we've got a common voice. We make our decisions by consensus, and we've been busy at this for upwards of 5 months now.
I was going to say, like, some of the organizations we kind of ran into have been exceptional. Like, I had not heard of the Ontario River Alliance before this, but they've really pulled some good weight, and they've been exceptional. They really, and Ontario Streams as well. So it's really been, I mean, if anything good comes out of this, it's going to be that, these organizations have met each other and know each other by first name and are, more primed to work together.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll talk more about what's going on with the Credit River and how we can fight to protect it. Today's episode is brought to you in part by Gills Fly Fishing International. Gills Fly Fishing International provides the destination fly fishermen with the best personalized trip planning and booking experiences possible. And they run FFI Magazine, an online fly fishing magazine with articles from your favorite fly fishing writers. The magazine is filled with tips, trips, and tightline stories to get you jacked for your next adventure out on the water. Visit flyfishinginternational.com to learn more. That's flyfishinginternational.com.
We're talking about one thing, which is making sure that we're not impacting the brookie population. But what other environmental impacts is this sewage plant going to be depleting? I'm assuming it's not just one thing. I'm assuming it's a lot more. I mean, that could be a way that we can point out the other things that we should be being more sustainable, and mindful of.
I mean, like, to me, it's kind of right. Like, it seems like we have this old playbook where you put in a wastewater treatment plant, which has the technology that's been around for 15 years, and you build a subdivision and you build a stormwater pond, and the stormwater pond overflows in the summer and it dumps into the river, and everyone's parking lot and driveway dumps into the river, and the sewage plant dumps into the river. And we just have this model where we just keep doing this over and over again. And if you go and look at some of the subdivisions, like look at the ones around like 401 and Mississauga Road. Like you go and look at some of those creeks, like they're burned out runoff creeks, right? And this is what we keep doing, and this, so it just seems like this is more of the same. And yeah, you could say, well, it's cheap and it's economical, and we need to build as many houses as possible. But what you're doing with this is you're destroying like a really solid ecosystem. Some really nice wildlife that people enjoy. People kayak there, they bird watch there, they fly fish there, they take a lawn chair and sit in the river and drink beer. You know what I mean? Like, I've been fly fishing, and I've had some people come and sit down right behind me.
That's actually just how I fly fish.
That's fine. And I see people, and I'm like, that's awesome. You know what I mean? That's their right, and they have the right to do that. But we're sort of wrecking this by developing it, right? And is there a way that you could, have your cake and eat it too? Right? Is there a way to do that? I don't know. Like, I would love to see, the solution where, either the federal government kicks some money or there's a rethinking of how we do these things to develop and keep the natural environment there. That would be a very positive thing.
Yeah, you're right. It's like this terrible cycle, like, it's just like, why we keep doing this over and over again.
And this is such a special place. Like, you look at the city of Toronto, you look at other large municipalities, where are they dumping their effluent? Not that dumping to Lake Ontario or the St. Lawrence or, the Don or whatever is a great thing, but you do have the fact that you've got a large volume that can buffer what's coming in. And the standards that they're held to are very rigorous. The water is pretty darn clean coming out of sewage treatment plants these days. It's just that this situation is so unique given who the receptors, what the receptors are, brook trout in a cold water ecosystem, and it's such a small receiving body that the potential impact is, could be devastating. And the way I always kind of describe it, these plants, whether it be a drinking water plant or a sewage treatment plant, any plant with human operators, at some point, the way I describe it, somebody's going to pull a Homer Simpson and push the wrong button, and something's going to happen. Something's going to happen.
I was waiting for that reference.
Totally.
It's going to happen down. It's going to happen downstream. But we have to do everything we can in our power to minimize what that impact might be if that button is accidentally pushed.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, but guys, you are doing an amazing job, raising awareness of this whole thing and also fighting for the cause. And yeah, like Change.org petition, I know it's amazing how many people have signed it, and you're definitely making lots of noise, and it's awesome. And thank you for doing that. It's great to see.
Hats off.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. I love seeing all the signs down.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you guys see those signs? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's a really good point. We didn't.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I showed up. Everybody's driveway's got to save our trout.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny when you think about it, like that. I don't think I've ever met any of those homeowners along the credit. I don't think any of them fish. I don't know how that's possible.
I know.
Because you can live there and not fly fish. It's like but it's cool seeing, people walking their dogs, and I think, Yilma, that one woman was like, catch anything?
I saw her again on Sunday.
Oh, yeah? She was like, catch anything?
She goes,
yeah, like.
Did you sleep over?
Sorry. Oh, that's funny.
And seeing the signs everywhere and save our trout, and I don't know, it's pretty cool, I think. And
yeah, absolutely.
And John, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, why is it important? Well, it's pretty special,
Mm-hmm.
and if you go there, you can understand why. You see pictures in books and magazines about these beautiful fly fishing locations.
Yeah.
And we've got one right here, like where, like an extraordinary one. Like I would say extraordinary.
Yeah.
For sure. Like every time I go there, I'm always like, I can't believe how clear the water is. Like you want to talk about gin clear.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Definition of, and it's right here.
One of the places you can go, there's like a gravel pit and a dump up the hill, and you drop down this river, and you're in this river, and there's brook trout in there, and you're like, how is this possible? You know what I mean? You're just like, it just doesn't like, it's amazing. You're in urban. 20 minutes later, you're in this river, and you could be anywhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You could be like thousands of miles away from Toronto. It's amazing. But it's right here.
Well, it's got such a great history too. Like, geez, it's almost like it should be like a heritage site or something. Like maybe that's a way we could protect this thing. Give it some sort of special heritage site powers.
I mean, Hemingway wrote about it. Jesus.
Yeah. Literally, yeah.
Literally. He, if you go to our chapter website, we got a little bit of history of our chapter. I'll throw that in right now for everybody. Greg Clark. When I get the email as secretary, they call me Greg. I said, no, I'm not Greg Clark. Greg Clark was a reporter. Columnist for the Toronto Star, about 35-year career at the paper. And Hemingway, Ernest Hemingway, came to the Star about 1921. I think he was 19 years old, getting some training. They hooked up because they're both outdoorsmen, hunters and fisher. And Clark took Hemingway up to what I figure, given what I've read, basically the Forks. And Clark was the host, but Hemingway definitely rocked his boat that day and outfished him. I guess he did have to go with his good looks. So anyway, the other thing about Greg Clark was that again we named our chapter after him because he was an ardent conservationist. So even back in the 30s and 40s, he'd like to take fish home for a snack, but he also promoted catch and release. We don't have to keep them all, lads. We can put a few back, which was pretty much ahead of his time. And the other tidbit that's kind of interesting, I'm sure everybody's going to be nodding. Everybody got tied a Mickey fin once or twice, the old style bucktail streamer, Mickey fin.
I love that fly. It's one of my favorites.
It's a beautiful fly. It's a beautiful fly to tie. It's simple. It's effective.
Yeah.
And originally it was called the Assassin just because it was so effective. And it was called the Assassin by a club on the Mad River in southern Ontario that Greg Clark was a member of.
Yeah, I know the matter.
Yeah, yeah. Nice little river. I haven't got the chance to fish yet, but Greg said the Assassin's a good name, but a Mickey Finn is how people would slip a little poison into somebody's drink, and do a little bit of clandestine murder type of activity. But so Clark thought it was a good play that he could call it something other than the Assassin. So Mickey Finn is what he named it, and it's stuck ever since. So
It's a pretty cool name. I didn't know.
I didn't know that the Mickey
Yeah.
Finn was named.
Yeah, it's
here.
crazy. How amazing is that? Famous writers, conservationists, Hemingway. Hemingway fished and wrote about the Credit River. I mean, come on. How cool is that? I spoke with Joe, my uncle, and previous podcast guest from episodes 4, 8, and 67, more about the Credit's history and his views on where it's headed.
The Credit in itself, it also from an angling literature standpoint, many authors, Vince Marinero fished the Credit. A lot of these angling authors, famous angling authors from the States, when they would come to Ontario, they always sought out the Credit to see what it was like and see what it was about. For me, that little bit of history and the history that surrounds the Credit, especially the West Branch, is quite a wonderful feeling and quite a unique thing for us to try and preserve, as well as the insects. A lot of rivers in Ontario, like if you're a fly fisherman and you like dry fly fishing like I do, a lot of the rivers in Ontario tend to be skewed more toward caddis. They have mayflies, but they tend to be more caddis-based rivers, which are fine. But if you read Halford, if you read all the great English authors and the concept of dry fly fishing, they are all partial to mayflies. I think in part because of the beauty of a mayfly and because of the different aesthetic that comes with that type of fly and fishing that kind of fly. And for me, the Credit used to be primarily a mayfly river with stoneflies, and then you were lucky if you used a caddis at all. Now, as the water quality degrades and changes and shifts, mayflies are starting to become less important, and the more marginal water quality insects are starting to become more important. So the caddis are starting to become more important, right? And those kind of insects are starting to become more important, which are fine. You'll still catch fish. It'd still be fun to skate a caddis. But old Halford will be rolling over in his grave, and that kind of bugs me a little bit.
The potential, right, is lost. Like what it was and what it could be. If we
Absolutely,
were just more careful.
absolutely. So that just boggles my mind. It just, like I say, if you go to the American side and if they have a resource that they feel is at risk, they will then, in not all cases, but they will build a fence around it and say, you know what, we've got to keep some of this so that it stays the same, as good as it can. They don't even know why, but they know that they have to do it. I can always go back to the story that as much as I hate private property, I think private property is one of the most important things because it actually preserves a lot of these resources. The Molsons used to own the St. John River on the Gaspé from its source to the ocean. And if they didn't, every person in Quebec would have eaten every salmon and there would have been none left. So as bad as it was that they didn't let people fish, it protected the resource. Ted Turner owned half of Montana. Fly Fisherman magazine made him Angler of the Year because he posted half of Montana. Why? Not because he wanted to fish it for himself. It's because he felt it was important to preserve this great concept of what made America great. A lot of different interests come and go on the Credit. What is the right interest for everybody? And that is to protect what's there. So that means the brook trout, and that means the quality of the water that they live in and the insects that they eat, and the trees that grow on the river. End of story. Anything else that you want to bring back, like the Atlantic salmon or the steelhead or all those things, those are all good ideas with good intentions, but let's put them on the shelf for now. Let's come back to look at the brook trout. Used to be, you could walk down to the Forks of the Credit and you would have to, you would catch 20 brook trout without even blinking an eye. State College, Pennsylvania, they have a stretch of water called Fly Fisher's Paradise. And it's fly fishing only, but there's no wading allowed. You're not even allowed to wade, right?
Yeah.
And when you see that water, the behavior of those fish are like incredible because they're like the way they would be 1,000 years ago, right? They're not afraid of people stepping on them.
Mhm.
So they've preserved a piece of that river to be as pure as it could be so that we can experience what that's like. There's still lots of other water for people to fish.
Mhm.
But I think as far as the West Credit goes, for me, it was my last hope. The West Credit had still a bit of that purity and wildness that the main credit used to have. And the West Branch has it, but it's now slowly starting to be encroached upon. And I think that they've got to figure out another way to address this sewage problem. I mean, it's, you know, you want to build houses, it's fine, but you're going to have to be more innovative than that, because you only have one river. You can't change that. You know, we need to protect the credit because the credit is what makes this part of the world in this area here important, and it makes it vital, and it's going, and it's going to be gone.
You can still help in a bunch of ways. Firstly, the best thing you can do is to call the Minister of the Environment, Jonathan Wilkinson, and leave a message telling him you support the designation request for the wastewater treatment plant on the West Credit River. We'll put his number in the show notes. You can also donate to the cause, links to those fundraisers in the show notes. Apart from that, you can become an advocate for the river, take it seriously. Protest injustice, stand up for the fish, get others around you excited to do the same. How many times have we said it? This river is 40 minutes away from Toronto. If your non-fishy friends don't know about it, they probably want to. Even just to hike, bike, or go for a walk in a beautiful area. And when they care about it like you do, they'll stand up for it too. And the more people who stand up to protect it, the better off it'll be. Thanks for listening to this special episode of SoFly, the fight to save the West Credit. So there's totally a show after the show. Thanks for listening to the episode. I know it's a little bit different from what we're usually putting out there, but we do have still Mitchie's Fishies 5 that we did with Dean and John. Want to just say thanks again to both of those guys for coming on the show. You know, the work you guys are doing is amazing, and it was just great to get the chance to speak to you about it all. Huge respect. So here's John and Dean's Mitchie's Fishies 5. So we've got 5 questions every show that we ask every single guest. They're called Mitchie's Fishies 5 because they're just 5 kind of general questions about fly fishing and stuff. We've kind of tweaked a couple of them today to be sort of about the credit for you guys. It's kind of like a special thing. But I'm gonna ask both of you.
You have to answer. You have to answer at the same time. No,
and
don't
we'll
do
see
that.
what you guys say. So. No, don't answer at the same time.
No, John, that's so confusing.
No, don't do that. Dean, we'll start with you for this first one. And it doesn't have to be brook trout, but you know. What is your favorite fish and why? If you had to pick a favorite fish.
Oh man.
No brainer.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm 100% going to say brook trout.
Yeah.
And I think that so first off, it was actually one of the first fish that I caught on the fly. So when I started fly fishing, you know, I was in the credit and I didn't really know what I was doing. I actually went 11 months without catching a fish when I first started fly fishing, completely self-taught. And I was kind of stubborn that way. And, you know, I had those things where I'd, you know, lift up my nymph and I had like a minnow on there and maybe one of them, you know, was a trout or something. But the first fish I caught was in the Rocky Saugeen. And I remember being there and it's been 11 months and it was September. It was the end of the season. And I had, one of my favorite flies on, which is a Gordon's quill or a quill Gordon, also sometimes called a mosquito. It's only grizzly hackle. It's an amazing fly.
Oh, nice.
And I was going along, and I just said, you know what, I'm not going to even try to catch fish. And I was just putting it in different spaces. And I came up to this riffle with a bubble line, and I was, 8 inches out of the bubble line, and then I was 2 inches out of the bubble line, then I was right in the bubble line, and smash, a brook trout took it. And I picked up my rod, and it was the first. I was like, "Oh my god, oh my god!" And I picked up this rod, and this brook trout was squealing. I could barely get my net. I was so excited, and I got in the net, and I was like, "Wow!" And then you look in the back of this thing, and it's just like browny, wormy, like neon blue, and you're like, "Oh my god!" And then you turn it over, and it's got this, like, it looks like a cheetah. It's got like bright red spots with blue around them, and it's just the most beautiful thing you could imagine. And then boom, you let it go, and that's it. And then you're hooked. Then that's it. Game over, man. Like you're a lifer, And so for me, it was the first fish, and I actively pursue them in the Credit in Algonquin Park. Like that's it for me,
I love that first fish story. It's such a good way of just freaking out. That's how it always goes, right?
Yeah.
I love it. I love it, man. John, what about you? What's your favorite fish and why? If you had to pick one.
Yeah, totally agree. The brook trout is where my heart is at. I was a long-time hardware fisher. I've only taken up fly fishing since retirement, last 5 years or so. So I'm pretty used to get pretty stoked on big Lakers this time of year, big pike, like the big fish, the big fight, the big lines, the big lures, and figured I would slow things down a little bit. I'd like to do something on my own. What's this Credit River? Oh, there's supposed to be some brook trout up there. First couple of times I went out, got absolutely skunked. Of course, I was not in the most productive location in the river. Somebody said, you should try around Highway 24. And again, having the benefit of being retired, I can go out midweek, so nobody's seeing my casting mistakes, my flag and my flying around, my just smacking and whacking water everywhere. Finally figured something out with a parachute Adams, threw it on, got my first brook trout, and same kind of experience. I don't think you can either be 6 or 66. Which is in the case what I am, and I just about crap my pants. What a little beautiful piece of jewelry, and it was like 8 inches long. It could have been a whale. It was a native, cold water brook trout. They're real deal, just a gorgeous thing. So I don't know how many I've caught since in the ensuing years, but every time it's just a thrill. And I think they've gone from 3 or 4 inches up to about 12 or 14, and I'm happy as a clam.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh man, I love the brook trout of that
Oh
river.
yeah.
Jeez.
I mean, like, how much fun was that? We like I said, we had a pretty good day. And
I love that you're
we got broken off by some massive fish, which was like awesome, and heartbreaking. But then we were both looking at each other. We're like, oh, man, we gotta go to the West Credit and do some brookies. And we got there, and they were all just like, they're just so spunky. They're like they're like rising, and you're just like, man, brook trout. Hilarious.
It's bizarre. One of the guys who I learned to fly fish with, he took his now wife, then girlfriend to the Credit, upper Credit, and he was fishing. He's like, look at this. He's catching these little fish, and she's like, this is what you come here to fish? These hand-sized fish? And he's like, yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? And if you either get it or you don't. You know what I mean? Like you either like fishing for small trout or you don't. And Ontario, a lot of it is a small trout game. And if you like that type of thing, if you like I don't know, like the walk in the river and presenting the fly and seeing the take, if you like that, then brook trout's a game. That's
and yet for people listening, obviously, from America or whatever that haven't been up here, and or from Ontario, like it's not a big stream; it's a pretty small stream.
So beautiful.
A lot of overhanging brush, so it's a really beautiful, lush place to fish, and you're, I don't know, brook trout they're the Ontario trout. I mean, so are Lakers, but you know what I'm trying to say, everybody.
I love it.
There are native species, right? So, yeah,
I love it.
Oh yeah, so that fiberglass rods and bamboo. It's like another reason to love brook trout.
Yeah, 100%. No, great answers. I totally gotcha. Okay, number 2 is, which season is your favorite on the Credit River? So if you had to pick a season, you guys are saying brook trout are your favorite fish to fish for, so maybe it's closer to the spring. But, I mean, assuming the whole stretch of the Credit, any time of year, what is your favorite time on the river?
Sure,
yeah, John, let's start with you. Yeah.
No, that is a good one. I mean, any time on the river is a good time. We do have instances, again, we talked a little bit about temperature, where things can get too warm on the Credit. So last number of Julys and portions of August have really been too cold. You should give it up for the day, go somewhere else,
Totally.
another species. But for me, I love September. No bugs, it's cool. Very rarely there's somebody out there. Again, midweek, there's basically no one on the river. And I particularly love that last day in September, last day of the season. If it's a nice day like it was this past year, go right to dark and just drink it in, the sunset. Caught a fish, and it was perfect. So I'd definitely say a little cooler, but not too cool. The water's cooling up, and they're getting ready to spawn. We're close to that magic time.
I love it. That's a great time of year. Dean, how about you?
Yeah, and I mean, not to cop out, but I was going to say the same thing. I actually kind of make a bigger deal out of the end of the season than I do the beginning of the season. I sort of feel like the last couple days in September, when that upper Credit River is open, I'm usually fishing for brook trout, and I just find like the fish are so colored up. Like if you get a male fish and it's got like starting to get the the hook in its jaw, and it's bright red belly, and it's got the white fins, it's amazing. And then I also find you get some really neat hatches, like the Credit sort of gets this grass that grows up around it, and you'll get you'll get hoppers in there, you'll get beetles in there. I had one night I was there in the Credit, I had a flying ant hatch, and like everybody was eating. I don't know what's in flying ants. It's black flying ants. Everything eats them. Like I looked up, there were seagulls all over the place, and I was like, and I'm looking at my body. I didn't have a flying ant, but I had a black caddis, and man, I caught the two biggest brook trout I've ever caught that one night within 5 minutes of each other on this black caddis. And like seagulls, you name it, was eating these flying ants, and it was unreal. You can't predict the hatch. I think they just come out whenever they come out, but it was fantastic.
Oh man, yeah. That sounds like an amazing day. Oh my god,
that does sound like an amazing day. That is a good thing to note that like those eager little brook trout, like you can have a great day hopper fishing. You don't really hear about Southern Ontario hopper fishing. We're not like in Montana, but that is definitely a place where it can go down.
Oh yeah.
And you get the right breeze, particularly if you get a nice windy day and you have those long grasses along the river, like stuff falls out of there into the river, and like brook trout aren't shy. They smash things. It's like the bass of trout. You know what I mean? They come around and smash it. It's amazing.
Yilma had mentioned the trico hatch, if we're talking bugs now.
Yeah.
In August, that can be phenomenal. I really finally, when I say figured it out, I guess I should tie on one of these little tiny 2022s, so a little bit of black, a couple of little light tails, and man, it was just for about an hour and a half, just constant action. It was it was just thrilling. So. And clouds, clouds, just clouds of tricos.
Wow, I'll have to figure that one out. I have not seen that one yet. I'll have to figure that one out.
It's insane.
I usually find in August it's kind of warm to fish. Like normally in August, like you got to get a cooler day or check your temperatures. I've started to go for bass and stuff like that on the fly rod, because I just want to have a bigger season and not harass the trout. Give them some time.
Absolutely.
100%. Yeah, the trico hatch is.
Oh yeah.
The trico hatch is so fun. Yeah, Yilma, we were caught a ton of fish on that trico hatch. Remember that with Joe there? It was just like the fish go crazy. So they go nuts for like a half an hour, 40 minutes, an hour, a couple hours kind of thing, and then they just shut off. It's just done. It's just gone. It's like, where the hell did they go? They just disappear. The river's flooded with them.
It was pretty crazy.
And it's a day hatch. It's like in broad daylight in the sun, or is it in the evening?
Morning.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And like it was pretty wild. Actually, it's funny. As Dean, like Mitch's uncle Joe showed us how to fish it, and it was like get there before dawn, and then like as the sun comes over this tall cedars, you can see them like go, like you see clouds of them, right? And then as the sun keeps going, the cloud gets smaller and smaller depending on the angle of the sun, and then until if the river's in full sun, then they're all gone. It was kind of interesting. It's like it was pretty cool.
It was.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. No, but I love that, man. You know, fall's a great time to be out fishing, and it makes a ton of sense for the credit. Okay, number 3. We'll start with you, Dean. What is one of your best or favorite credit river fishing memories? One of your fave memories from the river over the years?
Oh man, I wish so. That the flying ant hatch had to be up there with like
that's pretty.
One of my,
pretty good.
you know, because like I saw it and I figured out what was going on, and I got 2 fantastic fish. I'm trying to think other than that. You know, I'll pass this one to John. Give me a second because I sort of
give us some thought.
Spent that one already. Yeah.
Give
Go
us
ahead,
some thought, John.
You've got one ready to go.
Oh, okay.
John, how about
okay.
you?
Definitely this past September, fishing the West Credit, and having good luck on some floating flies, and yeah, they weren't rising, but they were coming up. I mean, if a brook trout's hungry, it's still a challenge, but if they're hungry, they're gonna take a lot of different things. A fish, and I knew right away he was a good fish, no doubt about it. And you know, it's of course catch and release, barbless hook, fly fishing only. Got him close. I got him really close. I had the net out, and as soon as I saw him, I said, "That's the biggest brook trout. If I get him in the net, I'll have ever caught." And and I did the old the rod is up, the net is down. He's like 6 inches away, and I know he was 14-inch trout. I just know he was a 14-inch trout. And of course, you know what happens. Where did he go? He's off. How the heck did he get off? I had tension on the line. And wait a sec, there he is. He swims away about 3 or 4 feet, and just hovering there that far from my boot. And I look and I go, despite the refraction and the magnification, that's a 14-inch brook trout.
Yeah.
You outsmarted me somehow, buddy, and I swear to God, he kind of looked over his shoulder and just kind of flipped me the finger.
Yeah.
he had the better result in that one, but it was pretty cool. It was really exciting. My average brook trout up there is maybe 8 inches or so.
Yeah.
Caught a few 12 inches, but this was a beautiful fish.
That's a nice fish.
Really nice fish.
Sometimes the best stories are the ones that got away.
Oh,
so
big time.
Yeah.
And he did. He did.
Yeah, I love that.
Good story.
Dean, did you crack
Yeah,
one?
so I got another one that's kind of interesting. It's more of a story than like something that happened to me. But I was fishing, where can I say the name of the spot, or is that we're gonna hotspot this place? It's the. So I was downstream of.
Yeah.
And there's a place there where there's a bunch of willows, and there's like the willows are in the water, and there's all this like garbage that's pushed in there, like a couple tires and some shopping carts. So I come along, I'm fishing downstream, and I just sort of walk past her, and I turn around and look up, and something comes out of the willows that was like this thing was like 3 feet, comes out of the willows, like big shadow, like 3 feet shadow, goes over, takes something off the surface, and then goes back into the willows. And I was like, oh my God. And I stood there and I sat there for maybe 5 minutes, and it came like this thing 3 feet long, comes out, takes something off the surface, and goes back into this like willow jam. And I was like, oh my God. And I actually got out of the river because I was a little bit afraid. You know what I mean? I was like, things like that live in this river. And I actually got out of the river. And then I had a 3-weight or something. I was too afraid to throw at it. You know what I mean? I was wow. Like I actually think it might have been, when I first saw it, I thought it might have been like a pike or a muskie or something like that, because I know that, again, it's kind of a soup. But that was one of the only time I've actually been scared out of the river was that one time, and I didn't throw at it. And I guarantee you it lives in there because you can't get it. It's in this like mess of willows where the current pushes right into the willows, and it just comes out and smashes things whenever it wants to. And people told me they thought maybe it was a brown, but I was like, man, that was a huge brown. It was huge.
Maybe, man.
Maybe it was just a huge brown. Yeah, maybe it was just
I don't know.
I mean,
when I talked to someone, they said, well, if it took something off the surface, it's probably a trout. But I was like, I don't know, man. Like, it was pretty big. Like, it was. I didn't want it on my 3-weight. Put it that way.
Yeah.
Don't break my rod.
I love it.
That's a good
I love
story.
seeing stuff like that.
Monster.
Stuff that's scared. You're fishing and you get scared by something. You're like, oh man, it's so fun, right?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I love it. John, we'll start with you on this one. Why do you fly fish? Why do you fly fish at all?
Yeah, you think I prepared for this question, having heard you guys ask. so many times, but no, it's a great question, and I think it's pretty much the stock answer. It puts me somewhere that I really want to be, that I get a lot of comfort out of. It soothes my soul, and it calms me down, and it keeps me focused on the task at hand. It's singular when you're fishing. You don't have to think about the stuff you left back in the city. You think about where you're at, and then it's also important at the same time to focus, but also look around and see. It's not just the fish; it's where I am. It's the setting. So it's a combination of the setting and the ability to catch a native fish, self-reproducing brook trout. That makes it special for me to go out.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's a great answer.
Yeah.
Dean, how about you?
Yeah, for me, it's kind of along the similar line. It's sort of about the experience. Like, as you know, growing up as a kid, I always liked catching frogs and catching snakes and catching turtles. And as you get older, it becomes less and less acceptable to kind of do that. But then you go and you stand in these rivers that are in the most, some of the most beautiful places you can imagine, and you put your hand in the river and it's cold and it's clean, and there are these really nice fish, really beautiful fish in the river, and like I just want to stay there forever, but you can't. And then for a short period of time, you get in the water and you get to pretend to be part of their world, and you get to throw them a fly. And if you're good enough, you're enough of their world that they believe it's real and they take it. And just for that instant, I get to be part of the world, part of the river, part of the fish. And to me, that's like a really, really unique experience.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely.
100%.
It's one of the best answers I've heard.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
No offense, John. I mean, like I'm with you too. It's
John,
really
we love your
romantic,
answer.
but like I was like,
That was
I think you
primo.
could run for office with that speech.
Yeah. Beautiful.
I know
Beautiful.
exactly. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Like it is cool to get to be part of that world. It's fun too. Like it's just a fun thing.
Yeah, it is fun. It is fun. Was that woman in Indiana, Mitch? She was just like, I care about the river because it's fun. Is that okay? Like,
Yeah.
I
Totally,
love
yeah.
that
Yeah,
soundbite.
and
She's
it's
like,
like-
I have fun going to
just
the
like-
river. Is that okay
It's like
with everybody?
when you go fly fishing, like you actually get in the river. It's like you're not on
Yeah.
a boat or in the bank. Like you get in the river with the fish, and you
Yeah.
walk with them. Like it's a really really amazing thing that I take everyone who I've taken fly fishing. I really like to take people who go fly fishing. It's been like,
Yeah.
wow, this is really neat. This is a really, really neat experience. Even if you're not fishing, you're just walking in the river. It's really
Yeah.
beautiful and it's really calm and it's really peaceful. And it's a great experience. And to learn to do that and be able to do that close to your home is fantastic. It's whatever, it saves your soul or something. I don't know.
It does
Totally.
save your soul.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I was going to say, trust me. I'm like, oh, you guys know what I'm talking about. It definitely does save your soul.
Okay, number 5 and the last of the credit Mitchie's Fishies 5 for you guys is Dean. We'll start with you. If you were a fly pattern, what would you be? If you were a fly, what would be Dean?
All right. So like I said, the first fly I caught my fish on was a quill Gordon, which is also known as a mosquito. Okay, it's a very simple, very classic dry fly pattern, and it actually uses one material, only one material, which is grizzly hackle. It's got a grizzly hackle tail, it's got a quill grizzly hackle body, it's got a grizzly hackle, and it's just so simple, and it floats really well, and everything eats it. And you don't have to worry about the color. You just got to change the size, and to me it's a wonderful, simple, easy fly.
I love that. That's we've never heard that one before. Quill Gordon.
Very rarely get dry flies. as
Yeah.
answers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have one of those in my box, actually.
It's a great answer.
Yeah.
I need to get some. I don't think I've ever fished with one. I might have one in my box. When you say all grizzly, I think I know what fly you're talking about.
I think Joe gave me one.
I like that. I like that answer. It's cool.
Look,
John, if you were a fly pattern, what would you be? What would John be in the fly box?
A little bit traditional, a little bit updated, but on the same track as Dean, a lot of grizzly in a traditional Adams dry fly.
Nice.
Again, given my age and eyesight, I like to I like to throw something on the surface that I can see, hence I've kind of graduated at times to a parachute atoms. It's you know, that parachute makes it even easier to see, but I like the tradition of a hackle wing atoms, and again a few more materials, but again basically grizzly is where it's at, that speckled grizzly hackle and a little bit of tail. It's done me well. Probably hasn't been as productive if I'd or been more productive if I'd thrown on some nymphs or streamers, but that classic old pattern, it does me just fine when I'm out there.
I love that classic
and I'm kind
tradition.
Of an old,
Love it.
Old pattern for an old guy.
I love it. I think that's a great fly, man. Like, I love the timeless. It's a timeless fly pattern. You know, it's timeless.
It's timeless for a reason, but I do love the parachute version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have so much confidence in that fly.
100%. That's it for the Mitchie's Fishies, guys. That's all the Mitchie's Fishies, and that's kind of it for the show. I mean, like, I just want to say again, you know, like, thanks again for doing all this stuff. Like, this is a lot of work and big thing to take on, a big effort to take on. I know it's probably, you know, keeping you up at nights thinking about this stuff because it's a difficult topic and, you know, it's a ton of work. So thanks again. And thank you both for coming on the show. It's been a blast chatting and just getting to talk about fishing too. You can find all of our content at sofly.ca. Reach out via email by sending your questions or comments to info@sofly.ca. Find us on Instagram @the SoFly Crew. Thanks for listening.